Good morning. Thank you, Sri. We're excited about our partnership with H2O. We've actually been working with H2O for quite a while now, but we've decided, just looking at the speed of the market and innovation, how things are going, what we're seeing as Dell quite a lot. Firstly, just touching on our market perceptions before we get into what are we actually doing with H2O and what have we done. We often hear about partnerships, but what are we actually doing? Which we've been doing a lot. But first, when we look at AI today from Dell's perspective, now everyone would normally look at Dell and say, well, you're building infrastructure. What is Dell really doing with AI? And it's quite a lot. So a lot of our marketing now and a lot of our publications around what are we actually doing to help with AI? You hear Michael Dell's whole philosophy around trying to drive human progress using technology, and that's exactly what we're doing. And we can't just do it with our technology alone. We're doing it with our partners. Everything with AI requires partners. It requires technology partners, infrastructure partners, services partners, the customers and your expertise, domain expertise, in order to truly make this happen. But we're seeing this a lot with the trend and the sort of the hype of GenAI. AI has been going on for decades. You've all been doing it for a long time. Now with the hype of GenAI, we're now going through that hype and into the large organizations that are looking at what am I truly going to do with it? We've been experimenting a while. How can we actually start to get a business return? So a lot of the executives are now saying, look, I've got some concerns over GenAI. How am I going to control it? What are some of the use cases I'm truly going to use it for? But more importantly, what's my ROI? If I'm going to invest all these dollars and we're going to do some development work with AI and we're going to let our customers use this, when am I going to get a business return? Or what is the business return? Are we going to make money? Are we going to save money? Or are we going to avoid risk and improve security? Or a combination of all three? So we're seeing a lot of that now of how we're coming out the other side of the applicability of GenAI and looking at prioritizing use cases. So Dell ourselves did the same exercise where we had nearly 1,000 use cases for AI. How do you deliver 1,000 use cases? Almost impossible. You've got to figure out which ones we're going to do and which ones are going to add value. So we went through the same exercise of doing use case prioritization, where we used a framework to look at which use cases for which business results are they going to make us money, are they going to save us money, and based on a certain ratio. And then what is our data readiness? We can't just look at how good is this use case going to be if we don't know if we can actually access the data that we need to actually do it. So we used a combination of framework of how can we identify the right business cases, for what business purpose, what outcome, and do we have the data readiness to go and do it? And then we've narrowed it down to less than 10. We're prioritizing less than 10 use cases now. And a lot of that is now looking at sort of beyond just the tradition of how we use LLMs and how good are they against our data sets, versus now there's a lot more techniques and requirements of how do we get more accurate. We're not going to be innovative if we're just doing the same thing everybody else is doing and using a llama model. We need to be able to fine-tune it. We need to be able to prompt engineer around that. We need to use RAG. We're going to need to put the governance and the guardrails around it. How are we going to be able to deploy it for inferencing? How do we get all the inference data back, keep learning? So it requires a complex ecosystem. And so we can't do that ourselves internally without our partners either. So we often use the analogy of how many people, this is going to show my age as well as the different demographics in the room, but who do you remember BlackBerries? Awesome. Oh, okay. So don't feel that old now. So when we saw the BlackBerries came out, we had this amazing device that transformed the way that we could operate. How productive we could be mobile, we could do all the things that we like doing. And then Apple come along. And who remembers when the iPhone came out? Now all the Gen Ys and the Gen Zs are going to start coming in. And we all went, wow, these are amazing. What did the enterprise do? No way are you going to use that device for work in our environment. Fast forward, I think if everyone takes their phone out of their pocket, does anyone have a BlackBerry? Probably not. So getting to that point, I think we're in a similar place with GenAI, where it's doing great in consumer, and how people can be creative, they can create new content, they can create things online, it's great in social media, all these things, but for the enterprise, we've got to secure it. We've got to make sure that it's operating in the right way, it's not going to create reputational damage for our organization, we're not going to have data leakage and privacy issues that will lose some of our IP, and we want to make sure that it's going to be reliable for our customers and how we're actually going to operate it. So getting towards a lot of the reasons why we partnered with H2O around being able to offer our customers a simpler way to be able to go and do AI experimentation all the way through to inference, including using all the techniques, the likes of agentic AI. How can we test different models? How can we actually bring our data in and be able to transform that data, prep that data, test it against different models, all in a single platform? What we found a lot within Dell, working with some of our customers, is it all depends on the level of experience. Some want to play with open source. Totally get why. We're using open source ourselves, but when it comes to going from experimentation to now we've got to run in production, who's going to support that entire ecosystem and how we're integrating it all and how we make sure it works all the way down to the engine room, i.e. the GPUs and the actual GPU drivers and all that interoperability? Someone has to figure all that out. If we're using a lot of different tools, we've got to do that at scale. It starts to become expensive, and do we have the right amount of resources to go and do that? So we're seeing a lot of customers now wanting to go from that kind of experimental phase to how do we really truly take this to production and start to get a return? The scale of that we're now seeing with the likes of using that in public cloud, which is great. So public cloud is great to speed of experimentation. I can turn things on quickly. I can test things. I can now figure out which use cases have got viability that I can go and take into production. When you start scaling that, the cost starts getting a lot of out of control at the moment, what we're seeing. So we're seeing all the way up to around 78 to 80% of organization are now looking at moving back on-prem. Not holistically, but looking at more of a hybrid model where we want to choose where do we run our workload. We don't want to get to the stage where if we're running it in the cloud and then the scale gets out of control, and now it's cost prohibitive to the value we're getting back to the business, because now we've got to cover the cost. So between H2O and Dell, we wanted to enable a true hybrid model. So you can deploy these tools and you can use the tools in the cloud, or you can deploy them on-prem if you want to look at a true lower TCO and getting the value you want for the business. If you want to accelerate and experiment quickly and do it in the cloud, great. If you want to then be able to have the choice to bring that back on-prem and run it at a lower cost at scale, where you can also do it within the privacy of your data center or a private colo, then you can do that within your own four walls and how you can secure it. And also start to use more of your own personalized data rather than putting that all in the cloud. Well, a lot we've found at the moment is with, particularly around data engineering, is where is all the data coming from? How are we then having to do all the ETL on that data, get data into right data sets that we can then use for AI with platforms like H2O. But having a platform now that's designed, engineered and integrated with H2O running on our Dell AI Factory that we announced with NVIDIA back in March time, and then at Dell Tech World in May, we wanted to give customers choice. Do you want to build? Build. Do you want to be able to buy platforms? That's where Dell's making most of our investments now around AI, is how do we build platforms so that customers don't have to? You can get on with doing the work, which is I want to develop and engineer AI use cases. I don't want to engineer tool sets. Everybody else has got that. H2O has built their own software platform. I don't need to build one. Dell's already building AI infrastructure. I don't want to build infrastructure. How do we bring the same experience you can get from the cloud when you're using AWS, Google, Azure, where I can just turn on services as I need them for the use cases I want? That's what we're trying to enable with H2O and Dell. And it doesn't stop there. So, we wanted to make sure that we didn't just say that we're going to create this model. We wanted to test it. So within our solution centers, which you can now see globally, worldwide, we can actually show you some development work and use cases that we've built jointly with H2O. We didn't just want to say, hey, you can now buy H2O with Dell, or we're partnering. We've gone through how will this actually be engineered, integrated, deployed, and supported on-prem as an H2O on Dell AI Factory with NVIDIA platform, where we get everything set up so you're ready to just start doing development work with H2O. So we built a number of use cases in our CSC. You can go out and you can see them in the demo booth out there at the front here and see the work that we've done, but that's just the start of it. We want to prove that all of the tool sets within H2O are designed to run on our Dell AI Factory with NVIDIA, and the whole control plane that enables all the performance from small scale all the way up to large scale within your data center. So when we were looking at the platforms and we were developing these, we looked at the sort of the skill sets within Dell and the offerings we have for customers, and what we found mostly is the idea of using GenAI, so many applicable use cases, but being able to actually deliver them in a way that we can actually use them for business was hard. So we often looked, when we were talking with H2O, that most customers are going to look at predictive AI as well as generative AI. We're not just going to deploy Llama 3, test it on a data set, and this is great, let's get it out into the public domain on one of our applications and let our customers use it. Most people will be using it in a very collaborative way with existing models, a lot of smaller models. How do I make sure I've got an environment where I can bring data in, I can transform it, I can now create AutoML models around that data, I can now connect that with large language models, I can use visual language models, I can use small language models. It just depends on the use case. What is the application and what is the applicability of AI you need for your application? So that's why we wanted to partner with someone like H2O to make that easy. They've got an end-to-end platform all the way from the likes of Data Studio to ingest your data, to be able to transform it, make sure you've got the right accurate data sets, then be able to build models. You can then test against that data, then use the likes of GPT-E and start to look at how can now I apply generative to my existing predictive, very carefully controlled models, all the way to the App Store that now I can go and publish these for inferencing. So the big piece that we also wanted to do was not just say you can now deploy that in small scale in your data center and scale it to all the way to the superpods we're seeing, but you can also now have that running on Dell devices. So on AI-powered laptops with NVIDIA, we've got our latest Snapdragons coming out with NPUs that H2O is testing on. So if you're a developer or you're a data scientist, I don't need a large-scale infrastructure in a data center to start testing. I could deploy H2O on an AI-powered laptop, start doing my experimentation, or I can enable my users in my organization to now have an AI-powered laptop that runs H2O for inference. If I want to give them a AI assistant on their laptop for their day jobs, if they're a salesperson, executive, now I've got an engineered solution that my data scientists have engineered, deployed out to my users on my laptop. And I can control it all centrally or from wherever I want to do it, whether that's on-prem or in the cloud with H2O. And then the final piece was we're also proving that on our edge platform. So with our zero-touch, zero-trust native edge platform, where you can now deploy edge solutions, whether it's in retail stores, could be in branches for banks, and you can now deploy your applications with zero touch from anybody having to actually go down there and deploy it. So we can proven that we can deploy H2O for inference at the edge, have the partners that can do the fast data transfer of that data back into your core or into the cloud, so you can do that continuous learning. If you're going to have people that are putting inputs into an assistant, do you want to capture that data? What questions are people asking of your chatbot? I want to capture that and I want to keep learning from it so I can make sure that my answers get better and better for my customers. Same applies for generative AI. If I'm using GenAI and I'm creating data, I want to capture that data and catalog it and make it available to everybody else to use as well, not just GenAI creates it, then what do you do with it? So with the data lakehouse from Dell, we've got all of that capability built in with the Dell AI Factory, so you can have a one-stop shop to, one, doing modern data management in a federated way from edge to core to cloud, as well as then bringing AI to your data. So if you want to run AI at the edge where your data is, with H2O, we can deploy it there with native edge. If you want to do more private AI in your data center, we can deploy the AI Factory, you can do it with your data. If you want to do it locally on your laptop, you can do it there. So with that, that's a collaboration with H2O and the strong partnership with Sri. So I'll say if anyone wants to see more, we've got a lot of our published white papers for the work that we've been doing in engineering to integrate H2O with all of our architectures with NVIDIA, as well as all of our different architectures around GPU architectures, as well as storage and networking. So all of that has been engineered for our customers in all different shapes and sizes. If you want more information, my team, I think some of my team might be in here somewhere. We'll be around. There they are, back left. We'll be out at the booth at the front near the reception, so you can see a demo of some of what we've done with H2O and any further information. Or if you want to set up a personal demo in our CSCs here in New York, Austin, all over the world, just reach out and we can collaborate with H2O. With that, I'll hand it back to Sri.
Now available?
Now available today.
Today. All right. So at the incredible launch of this partnership, a GPU on-prem is about a third the cost of GPU in cloud, and token-based economy is almost broken at this point, right? So what are some of the key characteristics of customers who are super matched for this particular Dell AI Factory on NVIDIA and H2O?
So, I mean, is it still working yet? So I think the challenge that that Dell have found, and we're similar to all our customers too, like we were doing a lot of work in the cloud too, particularly around data management. So how do we get our data and how do we transform our data, do analytics there, and then use that for AI? And just the sheer explosion in growth, particularly kind of the storage tax of our data. So the cost of purely storing the data and then using the tools and then using the compute power and the sheer growth and explosion that that's creating in the cloud just made it untenable for us. So we ended up having to repatriate all of that back on-prem, also because there's certain things that we want to be able to do with data that we couldn't put in the cloud. So we have a lot of our customer data and personal data. So how we're supporting our platforms, for example, we didn't want that data in the cloud, just from PII perspective. And we couldn't do as much of the specific AI use cases that we wanted to without that data. So one, we had to bring it back to be able to combine it with that data. And we just saw we've done a number of different TCO models in detail to look at the true comparison
So if you're
for ourselves as much as our customers. So how do we just be able to confidently say, this is the workload, this is the scale now, as well as what is it going to look like in 3 years? If I'm going to deploy AI, or GenAI particularly, which is going to generate data, at what rate? So if my current storage requirements right now, whether it's in the cloud, looks like this, and I'm going to have GenAI that's going to create images or marketing material, the data growth is going to explode. So, and using AI on that, then the costs just get greater and greater. So we need to give the option to control that cost.
So if you're a regulated industry like banking, telco, public sector, so you basically have to protect your customers and your own data.
I think that's becoming one of the hardest pieces, particularly for the regulated industries. I mean, obviously, we work with pretty much all of the top banks, the large healthcare, even government and federal, and around the things that they're trying to do, where privacy and security is paramount. It's key to everything, as well as regulation. The cost of regulation for banks, it's not just how good is this AI, but if this goes wrong, there's a much bigger impact for us from things like regulatory fines, reputational impact, and those kind of things. So I think there's still a bit of inertia around. The regulators haven't fully got to the level of maturity yet of how we're going to control and how we're going to govern AI. So I think there's a little bit of a pause until we see what's going to happen there. And the
Customer buys the AI factory and then plug and play, or does he need some services, and how does he expand? Most data centers are there's power crunch, space crunch. What other?
All of the above. So I think that the challenge for us comes down to when we look at some of these use cases, we have to look at where do you want to run it, and are you ready to run it? So we have certain use cases where it said, okay, we want the latest H200s from NVIDIA. Okay, what does your data center look like? What's your power per rack? We've had customers that said, oh, we can do around 15 to 20 kilowatts per rack. Not putting a lot of GPU servers in it then, certainly not the latest ones. You can put some of the lower powered generational ones, so it's mapping that AI use case workload requirement to where is the best place to run it and where can you run it. So we're doing a lot of partnerships with our colo partners so that customers can extend their private data centers into a colo that have got the right amount of power and cooling, as well as from a sustainability point of view. You look at some of the data centers today that have been around for decades, and if we start to put these high-powered machines in there, is it affecting how much power we're using in heat and cooling versus other more efficient data centers with our partners where we can still have the confidence of privacy, where we can have our own custom Dell AI Factory environment, but within our control and not in the public cloud. So it's an extension of our existing on-prem.
So folks like Equinix, one of our customers put an Equinix plus Dell. Actually, Combank was there, Richard, one of them.
I mean, Dell's got 3 fundamental customer areas. We've got the service providers. So we're working with the likes of IBM, Watson runs on Dell's AI Factory, partnered with them. We've got some of our infrastructure running the cloud providers. We've got the AI service providers, so those that are kind of trying to provide GPU as a service. And they're now looking to move more towards, it's fine, we can offer our customers GPU as a service, which is essentially bare metal GPUs. But you've then got to figure out all the tools and go and deploy onto it and how you're going to consume it. So a lot of them now are looking at, well, how could we be a Dell AI Factory certified partner? So we can provide a platform to our customers that then can come and get going with use case development quicker versus we've still got to deploy our tools, whether it's open source or NVIDIA or ROCm with AMD, whatever it may be. They've still got to do all that work before they can then start doing their use case development work. So we're trying to work with some of those CSPs to say, why don't you make the service more readily available for them to get going? But again, some of them now are having to make sure that they can be hybrid too.
The partnerships in services like partners in the public sector, EY, and once you build your models, how do you bring validation support from partners like Deloitte and others, right? So we have a pretty strong set of ecosystem that it takes to kind of take your models to not just go to production, but also stay there with rigor and response.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot with all of our customers. We can't do everything at Dell. And if someone said, can we do everything to do with infrastructure in the data center? Sure. But how good is that? Because it's whatever's going to be put on it that's going to consume it that's important for customers. So we have to work with partners. So yeah, we're working with all of the large GSIs, the Accentures, the EYs, and Deloittes. And a lot of it depends on industries too, because some of them have certain domain expertise. Some of it might be lines of business, the likes in finance and audit and tax with EY. It might be others that are more down at technical side with folks like Deloitte and Accenture. It just depends. So, and it depends on the customer. You may have existing partners that you already have relationships with and partnerships with, and would rather collaborate with them than just come in and say, oh, we'd prefer to use this one. It just makes it difficult for our customers. So the more that we've got that open ecosystem of choice with proven platforms that rather than trying to spend the time engineering all the different bits and deploy them, starts more with a proven platform with the services from partners that can get you going quickly. It's all about time to value and time to production. A lot of the challenges, we know what we want to do, and could we do it cheaper if we buy all the bits? Probably, but is it cheaper overall when you look at how long it's taking to get to market with what you're trying to do and the return on investment? So it comes down to, again, that buy versus build.
And maybe we end on a lighter note. I saw a couple of days ago a video or a picture of you in a motorbike that's going at a couple of 100 miles an hour.
That was probably like a different person than 3 decades ago, but yeah, that's my past life. I've always been a bit of an adrenaline junkie. From previous, I like throwing myself off mountains in the backcountry, powder skiing. I used to race motorbikes. I like things that were fast, and so like this industry is fast. Like everything is moving really quickly, which I think is super exciting. At the same time, it's kind of, we need to take a pause for a minute and figure out what we're doing because things are moving quickly. So I think we've got to keep up with the pace of innovation and the pace of change and what's happening. I don't think I'll be back on a motorbike anytime soon. I think I would be heading for divorce very quickly if I did that. So that was a fun part of my life, and now I'm excited about all the next challenges and seeing the next generation do this exciting, fun stuff and what they can do with AI. It's great. AI race is on. Yeah, race is on.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.